This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. One of the things I've been saying for a while that's finally starting to show itself is how behind the national media is on like where the Cleveland Browns stand as a organization. It took people a while to understand that the Browns are a pretty well-ran organization. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't made decisions that you might disagree with or drafted somebody that you didn't like that they did, right? A good organization is not one that's perfect for everything that you want it to do, but the Browns are objectively a really good organization. They've been able to foster talent for 4 years. Just look at the talent, the young talent they have on the roster right now, despite the fact that they've had 2 first-round draft picks since 2020, and that's just signs of a good organization. The Browns being able to win 11 games 2 times in 4 years, despite all of the things that's happened in those 4 years. Again, that's signs of a good organization. And that's something I've been saying for a while. Hey, the Browns are a good organization, but the national media has not caught up to that yet. It seems like they finally caught up. Kevin Stefanski is what feels like to be viewed as a top 10 head coach in the NFL. Now, I'm always wary of when we start to rank coaches like players or quarterbacks, because then we throw the same narratives on coaches that we have on quarterbacks, and it just doesn't fit, right? There's no such thing to me as a championship level coach. I think you can win a championship with a wide variety of head coaches. It's like saying you got a championship level right guard. Like, nobody thinks of it that way. Not to say that the coach is not important, but sometimes people get caught up into this trap of talking about coaches as if they're quarterbacks. And when we start talking about ranking them and who's top 10 and all this, that's where it becomes easy to fall into that. So I'm not doing that. But what is clear is that the Browns are viewed as a stable organization nationally. And it's not just one article. There are 3 articles that have ranked Kevin Stefanski in the top 10 that I could find with just one quick Google search of coaches ranking list, right? So this first one is from NFL.com through CBS, and they're ranking the coaches through tiers. In the top tier, right, the top coaching units going into the new season, for good reason, the cream of the crop. You got Baltimore, which makes sense, right? And then right below Baltimore, you got the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski, offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, and then Jim Schwartz. Stefanski was the best NFL coach of the year, was the coach of the year in 2023 for good reason. Cleveland was decimated by injuries, including a quarterback, but the Browns still went 11-6 and made the playoffs. The Browns became the first team since 1970 merger to play a playoff game without their week 1 starting quarterback, running back, left tackle, right tackle. Browns, who consisted of 27% of the team's salary cap, ended on the year with injury reserve, was the highest amongst any playoff team. And again, I always point this out whenever that stat's brought up. The Browns are the only team in the last 10 years to make the playoffs with that percentage of your salary cap on injured reserve. It's incredibly rare. It's not rare that a team has 27% of their salary cap on injured reserve, but usually when that does happen, you are like a 6-10 team at best. So that's going back 10 years where you played 16, not 17. Now it'd be 7-10 or 8-9 or whatever it is now. Dorsey called the plays for Buffalo before getting replaced midway through last year, joins Cleveland, which wanted a shakeup of things on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll see how improved Deshaun Watson is in the newer system. Schwartz is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. Overall, a good staff helped this team in the win column in 2023. So that's just looking at the Browns' entire coaching staff. We have this ranking from Pro Football Focus, right? They ranked the top 10 returning head coaches going into 2024. Number one, you have the obvious ones: Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, John Harbaugh, Sean McVay, Mike Tomlin, Matt LaFleur. And then you get guys like Dan Campbell, went to the NFC Championship game, and we'll get to why Dan Campbell's ahead of him. Then you got DeMeco Ryans, which is debatable. I mean, like, he's coming off of a really good first year, but it is a first year, so it's easy to get kind of carried away with that. Then you have Kevin Stefanski there at number 9. Pro Football Focus says the NFL's reigning coach of the year proved his worth as head coach by making the playoffs with the Browns team that was really lacking at the quarterback position. They had 4 quarterbacks attempt 100 or more passes, and Joe Flacco was the best of the bunch with a 70.6 Pro Football Focus passing grade. With the talent the Browns have on the roster, success likely will be determined by how Stefanski manages the quarterback position. Once again, Deshaun Watson has to live up to the price tag the Browns have paid for him, traded the first-round pick, fully guaranteed contract, and if it doesn't improve in early 2024, they might consider a switch with Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley were brought in for the whole season. So I don't agree with the assessment on the quarterback position because, like, I don't think the Browns are going into this season thinking that they're going to legitimately bench Deshaun Watson for Jameis Winston. I think that's a bit far-fetched there. But the ranking of Kevin Stefanski at number 9 is just another example of him being ranked highly. And then we'll go to the last example of the day, this most recent ranking from CBS Sports. That puts Kevin Stefanski here at 10. So much of Cleveland is tied to Deshaun Watson, which doesn't necessarily bode well considering how quarterback's unpredictable availability. Oh, man. I forget how the Watson takes are nationally. We'll see if that changes. Fortunately, Stefanski has proven adaptable as the leader of the offense. Take pressure off Baker Mayfield back in 2020, then coax in the playoffs bids out of Joe Flacco in 2023. If Watson is mercurial, then Stefanski's club will be at a steady hand. So that is where people are on Kevin Stefanski, and by proxy, where the Browns are as a organization when you're talking about who's making the decisions, who's coaching on the field, who's developing the players, the things that go into what makes you an organization. Now, while that's great, and all the people who were mad at the Fire Kevin crowd during the season can get their victory laps in on that, and please do enjoy yourself, get that victory lap in. I thought the takes about Kevin Stefanski during the season were kind of ridiculous. But now let's talk about this next year. And I am far from a Kevin Stefanski hater. I'm somebody who has been pretty high on Kevin his whole time here. But there are some realities we have to admit that's going to happen after this year, after this contract. Kevin is now looked at as a top 10 head coach. He's looked at as somebody who's won the Coach of the Year award 2 times. If you don't think the bar is going to get significantly higher for Kevin Stefanski, or that the bar should get significantly higher for Kevin Stefanski, you're being silly. And the bar for Kevin Stefanski in his first 5 years, nationally and locally, was set by the reputation of the Cleveland Browns at the time. Kevin Stefanski was not judged the exact same, and this is fair, by the way. I'm not saying this is like, oh, Kevin benefited, he's not as good as y'all think. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is how Kevin Stefanski was going to get judged, how any Browns head coach was going to get judged before 2020 was going to be based on the reputation of the Cleveland Browns. What does that mean? That means that Kevin was going to be compared to the other Browns coaches and the other people who have coached the Cleveland Browns and had no success. So when Kevin makes the playoffs, it's not just a first-year head coach made the playoffs and got to the second round like DeMeco Ryans did with the Texans. It's a first-year head coach got the Cleveland Browns to the second round. That's how people viewed it locally. That's how people view it nationally. His accomplishments in his first 4 years are going to be inflated in some way because he accomplished them with the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns are a team or a franchise that not a lot of people had good faith in. So if you have success somewhere where people don't think it's going to be a great chance for success, you get extra credit for that, right? That is what was going on in that first contract with Kevin. Kevin not only got to the playoffs 2 times. He not only got to the playoffs through 2 injury-ridden seasons, he not only got to the playoffs through a pandemic and then an epidemic of injuries in 2023. He got to the playoffs with the Cleveland Browns. How many times has that happened? That affects how people view him, even in Cleveland. The Browns are now moving out of what I like to call the since 99 era. Because for a long time, everything any player did on the Cleveland Browns would be compared to not their peers. It wouldn't be compared to other great Browns players. It would always be compared to something since 99. Or the Browns' success would be measured by the bar of since 99, right? Oh, the Browns haven't had single-digit losses since 1990. We were the since 99 Browns. That is the era that the Cleveland Browns have moved out of firmly through these first 4 years of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. They are no longer a franchise that is looked at as abnormal. They are a regular good franchise. They are no longer the since 99 Browns. They are a regular team that you have regular expectations for as far as what you have to overcome organizationally. It's no longer viewed as something you have to overcome to have success as the coach of the Cleveland Browns. And Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry deserve a ton of credit for that because they made it so that was the case. That's why it's fair for them to be judged in the since 99 lens, because that's where they were in 2020. The reason they're not in that lens anymore is because of the work that they did to get out of it. That's why the coach of the years are deserved for Kevin. That's why the new contracts are deserved for Kevin and Andrew Berry. That's why their reputations right now, this top 10 in their fields, are deserved. But now that they've gotten there, now that they've passed that threshold, this is no longer the since 99 Browns. We're not wondering if we're going to win the opener for the first time in 20 years. We're not wondering if we're going to win the first road game for the first time in 20 years or the first home game for the first time in 20 years. We're not wondering if we're going to make the playoffs for the first time in 20 years or win a playoff game in the first time in 20 years. We're not wondering if we're going to do all these since 99 stats anymore because that's not relevant. Now, Kevin and Andrew get judged by their peers. And their peers are in the top percentile of the NFL. Kevin's not going to be judged based off like what Robert Saleh is doing. Kevin's not going to be judged off of what some new head coach somewhere else is doing, like Josh McDaniels or something like that. Kevin's going to be judged off what Kyle Shanahan's able to accomplish. Kevin's going to be judged off of what Andy Reid's able to accomplish. Kevin's going to be judged off of what Matt LaFleur is able to accomplish. Kevin's going to be judged with those guys now. Because now it's fair to judge Kevin on that same bar with those guys. Now he has to hold up with those guys. He has the experience as a head coach, right? You know, comparing Kevin to Kyle Shanahan in 2020 was kind of silly. Because Kevin was a first-year head coach. Like, you can't do that. You can't compare him to Andy Reid in his first year. But now, the comp is a bit more fair. Kev's inexperience is no longer an excuse for him, right? He's at the point to where you expect him to start to, well, not to start, to be the guy that you associate with the name Kevin Stefanski, right? Like, you don't think that it's going to be a developing Kevin Stefanski or anything like that. He's at that point of his career. He's at that point of his tenure with the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns are at that point as a franchise. They're no longer the since 99 Browns. The bar is high. One of the things this year I think is huge is Kevin's working with a new offensive coordinator. That's going to have to be something Kevin's going to have to be good at. Because what Kevin's going to do if he wants to be the Browns coach, like Mike Tomlin has been the Steelers coach for like 20 years. If Kevin wants to be a head coach in the NFL for the next 15, 20 years, well, he's got to work with different offensive coordinators. He's got to work with different defensive coordinators. We saw him do a good job of it with Jim Schwartz, right? When he came into the league, when Kevin came into the league as a head coach in 2020, he hired his homeboys because that's who he was comfortable with. That's who he knew would follow him. Then he got more respect in the league and he was able to hire somebody like a Jim Schwartz. And now he's at the point to where he has 2 coach of the years. He's able to hire an accomplished offensive coordinator like Ken Dorsey and also have somebody who's an accomplished head coach and Mike Vrabel just kind of kick it around the organization because he has that clout. He has that power, right? Y'all remember Pokemon? I don't know what it is with me in the comps this week, but my mind's been working in metaphor all week. But so we're going to bring this to Pokemon. But you remember one of the most powerful Pokemons is Charizard. Charizard is super powerful. It's the most evolved version of that fire type. It's one of the best Pokemon in the game. But if you aren't at a certain level as a trainer, a Pokemon trainer, you're not going to be able to get Charizard to do anything you want it to do. Right? You got to have the clout to tell Charizard to do the fire. And that's one of those things with Kevin, right? Kevin got in here in 2020. He did not have the clout to hire all of these big name offensive coordinators. It's one of the mistakes that we've seen constantly throughout the expansion era of the Cleveland Browns is these no name coordinators get hired to be the Browns coaches, and they, to compensate for being no name coordinators, hire these coordinators that they have no clout on. Like, they don't have enough clout to really have. Like, Mike Pettin had Kyle Shanahan on staff. And when that's the case, Kyle don't work for Mike. Kyle worked for Kyle. So it's hard to get Kyle to get with the program, right? And that's where Kevin was in 2020. It's probably why he hired Joe Woods. It's probably why he went with Alex Van Pelt. Guys he knew would respect him because he's worked with them before. Then he got that first coach of the year. He had enough clout to go ahead and upgrade to Jim Schwartz. Now he got more clout. He got the upgrade to Ken Dorsey. And that's going to be something he's going to have to work with. Kevin's going to have to be able to have that respect throughout the league, bring in respected coordinators. And this is how you build programs, right? It's impossible to have great coaching staffs when you don't have respect at that first head coach spot. Because coordinators want to work with people they respect and know. And that's where the stability of the Cleveland Browns has afforded them this situation. And that's something that Kevin needs to be good at taking advantage of. He did a good job with it last year with Jim Schwartz. Instant upgrade at defensive coordinator. We'll see if it's an upgrade with Ken Dorsey. We'll see if the clout is there for him to be able to work with Ken Dorsey and this be copacetic. We saw the difference between Todd Monken working with Freddie Kitchens, who absolutely was not a high enough level to control the Charizard that was Todd Monken. And now we see Todd Monken with John Harbaugh, and he in control. He ain't doing none of the Todd Monken stuff that we saw Todd Monken do in Cleveland. He not out here talking to the media about how bad John Harbaugh was, like he was about Freddie Kitchens. You know why? Because Freddie Kitchens did not have the requisite clout to have a dude like Todd Monken on staff. But John Harbaugh does, so that one works out. You see what I mean? The longer Kevin coaches, the more Kevin accomplishes, the easier it's going to be for Kevin to put together strong staffs because, hey man, that clout matters. That clout does matter there. Another question I have for Kevin Stefanski is one I have not seen asked that much. But if you look at Kevin's 2 best seasons, they are 2 chaotic seasons, 2020 and 2023. 2020, you had the pandemic. You had guys going in and out the lineup for COVID, and Kevin did a great job managing the chaos and putting together a team each week that can win games. You look at 2023, chaotic season, guys going in and out. I feel like we had more guys in and out the lineup in 2023 than we did during the pandemic. But Kevin did a great job navigating that chaos and putting together game plans and rosters and lineups that can win games. It's great to know that Kevin can work with chaos, especially if you're the Cleveland Browns head coach. It's an important skill. Chaos happens here. But it's also something we need to see where Kevin does not have to deal with chaos and he's still really good. Like, is Kevin Stefanski good because he's good with chaotic situations? Or is Kevin Stefanski also a coach? Or is Kevin Stefanski a coach who can handle chaotic situations? But if chaos does not arise, he can still put together a good team. Like, is this just one skill that he's good at? Or is this just part of what he's good at? Is he great in chaos in spite of his overall coaching ability? Or is his overall coaching ability what allows him to be great in chaos? I just want one season where things are relatively normal so we can just get that one out the way for Kevin. I believe he would be great if there wasn't chaos. I see no evidence to believe otherwise, but I also don't see enough to confirm that belief about Kevin Stefanski. So I think we need to see it. All in all, yes, Kevin Stefanski is a top 10 head coach. Yes, if you were pro Kevin Stefanski for the last couple of years, you can do the victory lap this summer. But after that victory lap is over, you have to understand the bar is different. An 11-6 season in the first round bounce in the playoffs is not going to get a coach of the year this year, even if you get a lot of injuries. Right? The bar has risen for Kevin Stefanski. He is no longer judged on the Since 99 stuff. He did a great job getting you out that era. But now Kevin's going to be judged on his peers. And that should be the highest show of respect for Kevin, that he got the Browns to the point to where they're no longer compared to being the Browns, because we thought that era would never end. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.